Should be live stream now. Kia ora, DK.
Okay, is there no objections from anybody on the Zoom today? The recording is happening. Kia ora. Trying to work out a system to run this efficiently. I don't have the luxury of triple screens or multiple screens. I've got one laptop and I can bring up the run sheet. It may be easier if we add the agenda on the head screen. There we go. Item 3, the matter to do with declarations of interest, and reminder to the joint committee members to keep that updated, please, as we move through, and particularly as topics or matters, agenda items are discussed. Moving to confirmation of minutes from the 13th of December 2021. I'll take those minutes as circulated and read.
Aye.
Is there someone move that we adopt those minutes?
Happy to move, Tammy.
Moved by Jane. There was a seconder.
I'll second. Tamo Penny.
Kia ora, Penny Smart. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? That matter's carried. Any matters arising there? We'll keep that matters arising open, because I think there's a matter that is listed as item 5. I'll ask Justine to just give an overview of it and what this is intending to achieve with respect to our joint committee minutes. Kia ora, Justine.
Kia ora, Tame. Tēnā koutou katoa. Lovely to see you everyone again so soon, and thank you for your patience with us scheduling things so soon together. So the item 5.1 is a new item for the joint committee. It is an action tracker that responds to a request before Christmas from yourselves to make sure that we had transparency and clarity on actions that were still outstanding, and that for the Morikura, especially our new staff like myself and the team, we could make explicit the things that we were working on and when we were bringing them back to the joint committee. So these next two items, in fact, the action tracker and the indicative forward work plan for this committee are a tracker. They're designed to help us collectively stay on top of the work and the actions. So work in progress. The action tracker, we've gone back through every minuted action since the joint committee was established and checked if the action was completed. So the 2-pager that you have here is the attachment to item 5.1, is where there are still actions that we have on now our action tracker list to resolve. I don't want to necessarily go through the detail of that, but we will keep this updated, and with your permission, we will submit this each time we have a formal query for us to check and talk about. But if there's any questions or thoughts about the action tracker item 5.1 attachment now, I'm happy to hear from yourselves. Otherwise, I might talk a little bit more about 5.2. Penny.
Kia ora, Justine, thank you. Just on the number 1, the members' allowance policy review, but probably a bit more broadly that when it says in the column who, I'm just wondering, does that mean that that person named is going to do the task, or they're just going to make sure it happens?
Make sure it happens. So this is an accountability for us within the Morikura. Obviously, as Potataki, I'm kind of responsible for making sure everything happens here in the Morikura, but I just think it's clearer for ourselves as staff that we name someone who's leading on the work and coordinating that. But we are happy to take advice if there's a better way of listing that, or if you'd prefer that the Potataki is listed for all the actions. We're relaxed here.
No, not necessarily. I just wanted to be clear on that number one specifically, but that's also clear for the rest of them too. Thank you.
No problems, Penny. Just on that one, just for the avoidance of doubt on that item, which is reviewing the allowance policy, it was something the Joint Committee asked us to come back on. In particular, at the minute, it's about who signs off the allowance claims. At the minute, that is Tame. As chair, we think that now the Morikura is operational, that it's an operational matter, that particularly we can take that off Tame's shoulders, but that's just something we will bring back for consideration. So that's the main focus, I think, of that particular action from our perspective.
There's definitely, kia ora, Virginia.
Ka pai. Thank you. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Justine. On the action tracker, I don't see the Mātauranga Māori strategy on there.
Virginia, that's true. We have Mātauranga Māori strategy, Kororo Tuku Iho. We're calling that listed on the forward work program for the Joint Committee. There was no specific action to bring that back at a time. It is certainly a priority on the work plan. So we are making the distinction between minuted actions and work program commitments. I hope if that's not clear, we know we've got to do work on that. It's clear in my report too that that's a priority. Tame.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Fiona Kemp has been in touch and she would like to have a discussion, and that's going to happen at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we'll certainly put a little bit more shape and certainty around that approach from where she's at. I think she's just not, it's more about uncertainty on process and how we'd like things to proceed with. Let everyone know that that's underway, and we'll get a notification following our discussion at 1 o'clock today.
Kia and we would be happy to update in the next Potataki report on that issue, since it's very material and it's urgent, as well as reporting back more formally. We're very happy to do that if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Any further discussions on the action tracker? If not, we have a opportunity to resolve that the action sheet be received from Joint Committee Action Tracker.
Aye.
Have a mover, please.
Aye. Jania.
Jania, and the seconder, Amy McDonald. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? That's carried. And moving to the forward work plan.
Got a Tame, item 5.2. This is kind of goes alongside the action tracker, and that's designed to provide a very early first view of where we in the Morikura and also reflecting commitments we have made to report back to yourselves, where we are seeing both the workshop topics landing, at least an indicative view, and what we are suggesting or have been asked to do in respect of the formal hui. Now, this view, as often is the case with boards, this view will change from time to time, particularly as decisions get made through the meetings to have a report back on X or Y, and we will add those to the forward work program as relevant. It helps us all to be clear about the conversations we are having together and when decisions are made. Now, some of the items on or topics for discussion on the indicative forward work program are required. They can't move. For example, the annual planning process in respect of the Ministry for the Environment, or ideally the budget, those sorts of things we don't have a lot of discretion over in terms of timing. Some of them we will have discretion over, and as time and circumstances with the COVID allows, I think we all know that it's sometimes harder to get through work when we're not meeting for a full day in person, when we're meeting online for perhaps a shortened period of time. We will make sure that this calendar remains up to date where things do move, where we do have some discretion. So that's really a first view. One thing I would note is that the second half of the calendar year shown on this paper will very much reflect the agreed annual plan. And so only some items of the July to December period are shown for now. What I wanted to do with this document was really, I guess, test with yourselves, is this the view that would be helpful for yourselves as well as us in the Mautikura, and also, I guess, signal some of the thinking at current around conversations. But over to yourselves for any thoughts or comments on that. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Invite any comments?
Kia ora, Tano.
Kia ora, Amy.
I just put a comment in the chat, but I might as well just want to say I really support this approach. It's helpful to be able to see what's coming ahead, and then sometimes if you've got something in mind that you've been thinking, where's that at? It's a place just to check in with that. So I appreciate the structure and just the visibility that it gives us. So thank you, Justine. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Amy. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Amy. Kia ora, Penny.
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing about the this forward planning and the action tracker. I really like them. Thank you. I guess it's what I'm used to as well, which is helpful to me. But yeah, I think it's great transparency, great clarity. Thank you.
Kia ora, Penny. Thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Kia ora.
I think. Yeah,
Kia ora
kia ora.
tū, Chair.
Kia ora, Kate.
Kia ora tau, Justine, kia ora, Justine. It's just I too like the approach, and I'm just sort of asking, whereabouts would reports come to us regarding particular programs or proposals that have come through the Whenua Whānui? Because I see you've got Whenua Whānui Fund in April, but is that a higher level of just talking about the fund, or does that drop down to talking about updating us on proposals that have been made?
Kia ora, Jane. Great question. Through the chair, there's two things here. One is we would anticipate keeping yourself and the senior officials oversight group more up to date when certain things happen, like Whenua Whānui Fund proposals. So, for example, you will have received from us, a bit of an update on accreditation in terms of the nursery providers. We will have 6 weekly pānui, which will also keep us up to date. The intention, as I understand it at the present moment, is that we will have 2 Whenua Whānui Fund contracted in a way before June 30. That is where we think the proposals are at. You may recall we had expressions of interest sought. We have 10 plus 5 now new ones, expressions of interest in the pipeline for Whenua Whānui Fund funding. And we now need to work with the local groups, the community groups, the hapu and other groups who are expressing interest to develop up proposals that meet the criteria. And that's a work in progress at the minute. So we will both brief you directly from an informational perspective before April and have a bit more of a fulsome update on proposals around April as planned in the hui. So that's the intent at the minute, just based on where the pipeline of expressions of interest is at the minute.
Kia ora, Justine. And just one last, are we still setting aside for boat trip and overnight?
Tame?
Are we still setting aside the boat trip and the overnight at Marae?
My read of it is, you know, that 1 o'clock number that keeps coming up on our television screens. I'm not sure where we're going to be at it. At this stage, it's still an option, but the dates that have been suggested have not thrown up too much enthusiasm for all people to go charging off. I guess it's going to be a call around how those numbers are faring and the balance between that and, of course, the ability of our joint committee members as well as the Māori Kura staff to all come together and take that opportunity on.
Kate, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hard call at the moment.
It's a changing environment.
Yeah, it's going the wrong way at the moment.
Aye.
Okay, any further comments on the forward work plan?
Yes, please, Tommy. Through you,
Sure.
Tommy.
Sure.
Through you, the chair. Justine, on our you've got the hui dates and that. Can the groups still come and present to the joint committee, like we've had in the past? We've had groups come in, so there's room still in there for those groups, like around their proposals.
Kia ora, Virginia, through the chair. At this point, because our COVID settings mean that we are online until the green traffic framework, right now that's fairly tricky for us to, well, it's impossible under current settings to meet in person. And also it's very difficult to run full all-day digital meetings. We find it doesn't work for those online to meet for such a long period of time. So our intent there was, while we were in the Omicron situation, first of all, we can't meet in person, and with an online meeting, knowing we've got a lot of work to get through in the formal sense, to not have external groups for now. That said, we have a strategic planning proposal which covers everything from Mātauranga Māori to, you know, what a more 2 to 3 year, 10-year view of the program might look like, and first conversation to inform the annual planning process. And it may well be, subject to discussions with Tami and Penny and others, that we bring in what I call an online panel on a range of topics that we know we've heard that yourselves as the joint committee are interested in. And we're still kicking around that, whether there is an opportunity to have time for, whether it's the right format to have some external presenters. That said, right now I'm not seeing a lot of time for individual whenua whānui fund kind of proposal or groups to come in. If that's where the question was heading, I'm more interested in, I guess, keeping things at that generic and strategic level for now, given time is so short.
Okay, I'm just concerned. My concern is that when do our marae or community groups, perhaps, you know, like even if it was half an hour at the beginning of the meetings, and they have a set time to come in and just perhaps talk to you know, like they have some sort of engagement into this, like they have in the, you know,
In the past.
and that. Yeah, that's all. I mean, I just thought that we're just tending to maybe not include them now.
So, Tame, can I just make one quick comment before you jump in, which is we do have an engagement program directly with communities, which Billy is leading on, which we'll come to later, but I hadn't been thinking about that for now, but Tame may have views.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. I guess the challenge is you know, it's obvious around COVID and whatnot, but the time where we kicked this all off, we didn't have Maurikura. And from where I sit, I think we have to manage the depth at which submissions can be processed and received by the Joint Committee, as opposed to getting into the operational aspects of where these groups are at. So maybe the consideration ought to be from the Joint Committee to allow the Maurikura staff to make that initial engagement, and with that kind of dialogue happening, that level of engagement, determine whether there is a kind of submission or a point at which these groups can present either online or via the Maurikura staff to a full Joint Committee meeting. I think there are some critical considerations in terms of the shift, if you like, of emphasis, where, and I'll put this on the table right now. In amongst the Kaipara Uri, there are a variety of forestry interests. Now, you can't tell Kaipara Uri that there is a Kaipara Uri forestry strategy. So what better way to deal with that than to try and get an agreement that there is a connection between Woodhill, Araparera, Oruaparo, the groups in Poto and Te Roroa on forestry. Because at some point we have to present our position in the context of Kaipara Moana remediation on what that would look like. So I guess it's an option that we have of trying to draw that together and have as a connected opportunity to talk about commercial forestry with the landowners, because it's no different to us trying to achieve the same with the international landowners and their commercial forests. But I think it's one of those matters of probably taking the read and the lead from our Maurikura people, our Maurikura staff. Kia ora. Any further comments on the forward work plan? Okay, would someone like to move that we receive that? It's agenda item.
Happy to move.
Okay, kia ora. That's Greg says.
Happy to second.
Was that? Oh, kia ora, Amy. Moved by Greg Sayers, seconded by Amy McDonald. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Those against? Any abstentions? Kia ora. That's carried, and welcome, Greg. Tēnā koe, John
Well,
Hutton.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Move to your agenda item 6.1.
Kia ora koutou anō. With item 6.1, the paper is the Kaipara Moana Remediation Program Draft 6-month report. We're looking for approval from the Joint Committee to approve in principle the draft report that's at attachment 1, and also delegate to the Chair and Deputy Chair the power to approve a final draft for provision to the Ministry for the Environment, and the ability of the Poutātaki to make minor editorial changes prior to submission if required. I won't give a long spiel on this, so hopefully the paper is pretty self-explanatory, and that the report covers what it needs to cover. Just a couple of relatively minor matters. You'll see that the report doesn't look particularly flash. It doesn't have our branding and things. The idea is that it follows the look and feel of the annual work plan documentation for Ministry for the Environment. The second thing to note is in the details of the report, you'll see that there's a discussion at page 3 about progress in the program. A lot of the commentary you'll see there are matters that Justine and you have already discussed at the workshops, some of the critical headwinds and things for the program. Just draw your attention to the last paragraph on page 3 of the draft annual report, or sorry, 6-month report, and that's making the point that the financial summary provided later on is a snapshot but of spending to date, but it's not a good reflection necessarily of the progress to date. And the reasons, there are multiple reasons here, but often it's because the remediation works that have been contracted with landowners are active and are underway. And so, but grants money itself is only paid when projects are finished and signed off. And similarly, some of the big investments we're making in digital tools over the last 6 months before Christmas, there was a lot of work done setting up those contracts and effectively determining all of the things that were going to happen. So it's only now that the substantial costs are going to be happening, and that's will be carried through into the second 6-month period. So I'm very happy to answer any questions on this. Hopefully it's a pretty straightforward document to provide MFE. Kia ora.
Sorry, kia ora, John. Any comments? Kia ora, Greg Sayers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I coming through okay?
Aye.
Aye, okay. I'm happy to move this recommendation, Mr. Chair. I do have a question for you, John. That's just, I guess, your advice to us as a governance committee around the risks going forward around, paper. Just would you like to highlight, in your mind, any risks that we should be aware of?
I don't think there are any significant risks. The conditionality we're kind of asking here for the delegation to the Chair and Deputy Chair to sign off is just to make sure that if in the next week we find, say, a bit better financial information and things, we're able to update that. I think overall the 6-month report is showing good progress in some areas but lagging progress in others, but we've got a good narrative around that, and Ministry for the Environment are quite aware of the kind of pressures that we're under. So I don't think as an artifact it's a particularly risky document. Otherwise, I mean, really it's the wider risks to the program are ones that we've already talked about and are covered and are being dealt with in the normal way through the work program and risk management of that.
Okay, John, thank you.
Any further comments? Kia ora, Jane. Kick the cat.
Kia ora, through the chair, thank you, Tami. I have a query in relation to the field training. I see you've got 4-day field training. Are these the ones that were the information days, or you're going to have separate field training as well?
No, that's recording the field training that took place at the very end of November last year. Just remembering that this report only goes up to the 31st of December. So the numbers there are for the session that happened there. I don't have the dates on the top of my head, but of course we've had the information hui, and just last week there was a further training session held with another one planned in the future. But that's falling within the second 6-month period of this financial year.
Yeah, because there were 2 before in November. Okay, and the other one is, I had noted that you've got right at the beginning in your covering, you had the engagement policies of Northern Regional Council, and this is just a question on, you've got the engagement policies, Tamia, of Northern Regional Council. Does that Auckland Council sort of floating in there somewhere?
Aroha Mai Jane, could you point to where that is? This is in the agenda report.
Yes, it's just something I picked up on. So while
okay, yep. So that'll be page 14, and it's in the discussion, the consideration discussion, the third point there, significance and engagement. Look, this is a standard paragraph we include in our reports. It's to do with the Local Government Act, and it's pointing out that this is of a level of significance and engagement that doesn't require public consultation. So there are parts of the Local Government Act that, if Local Government Act are making significant decisions, for example, on the 10-year plan, they're obliged to go out to the wider public and consult. What this paragraph there is effectively doing is stating that the matter in this report is not of that kind of significance that the Northern Regional Council would need to run that. And it refers explicitly to the Northern Regional Council because it's the Northern Regional Council that is hosting the Māori Kura and is effectively the host right now for the Joint Committee. So hence it's not needing to refer to Auckland Council. But yeah, if we had a more elegant drafted piece, or if we could make that disappear from our reports, I'd be quite happy, but it seems to be something we need to do just to cover ourselves off.
Oh, right. Kia ora. Thank you for that. I'm happy to second after Greg.
Hey. So moved by Greg Sayers, seconded by Jane Sherrard, and these resolutions are in 2 parts. I'll just remind everybody. First one was to receive the report from John Hutton, and then the other 2 matters are part of the second resolution. So moving the first resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Those against, any abstentions? That's carried. And are you 2 prepared to move the second?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Kia ora, Greg. Kia ora, Jane.
Kia ora.
And moving numbers 2 and 3 of the same agenda item. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, any abstentions? That's carried.
Good
Kia ora.
work.
Thank you very much, John.
Good work, John.
Must be that beard that slowed your Okay, agenda item 6.2, the Catchment Reference Group's establishment. And here we have Ed Rawson and William Wright. Let it be known that I have always observed Mrs. Wikitoria writes instructions that her son is to be called William.
She'll be listening, Tammy.
Oh, kia ora, William.
Tammy. That's it.
Oh, kia ora tātou. Lisette, Catchment Remediation Manager, here to present the paper on the Catchment Reference Group. So this paper summarises decisions and discussions that the Joint Committee has made before regarding establishing a Catchment Reference Group across 3 river systems, specifically the Wairua, the Maungakahia and the Hotio. In our recommendations, we have noted that the Joint Committee has previously supported 1.16 million in project value across those 3 river systems. We are seeking to set up a catchment reference group for each river system, and that a representative for each of those river systems and a Joint Committee representative acting as chair would co-design the terms of reference and catchment reference groups. We're seeking to do this before the end of April, given the urgency of these discussions. Is there any questions or any comments thus far?
Kia ora, Lizzie. Just around that matter of the Joint Committee representative chairing these reference groups is a matter that should be discussed at today's meeting.
Sure.
I want to also note an email I received from Jocelyn Yeoman in registering her apologies that she deems herself overloaded to be able to take on a role such as that. But I think it is one of those points that ought to be part of the deliberations as we consider the information. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tammy.
Kia ora, Genia.
So today we're going to be nominating someone to move into this chair position.
Well, I think that the discussion is whether it's worth considering 3 separate levels of engagement, or just how we maintain that as bring the whole 3 together as one catchment reference group with a Joint Committee chair. That's one option, as I view it, and whether there is sufficient requirement, I suppose, or value in structuring it that way. The idea was really around giving them a link to the Joint Committee at some point. And I think the other part of that too is there's a measure of uncertainty as we're working towards the legislated Kaipara Moana body that will take over from this Joint Committee, and whether we are not setting precedents for for that legislated body in time to come. But however, it's up for deliberations, and that's the thinking at this stage. And I can talk a bit more about it a bit later on. Kia ora, Penny.
So I just want to get it clear in my head, kia ora tame. So the Joint Committee representative would only be there for as long as the terms of reference takes, correct? Yeah. Okay, just speaking from experience, I think an April deadline is quite optimistic. These terms of references are not easy, but yeah, so it'll have to be quite intense. Kia ora.
Any further comment?
Tammy, does William have anything to say about this paper too?
Yeah, kia ora, Virginia. Look, firstly, kia ora, Joint Committee members, and to you, Sri and Jane, my condolences for the passing of Pam Moana. I've had some huge, lengthy conversations with Pam many years ago, and whatever she did, and her focus was committed to her people and to the principles, I suppose, to in trying to settle her claim and related claims that went with her. So my condolences to the family. Your comment, Virginia, what do I have to say? I think this is, it's been quite sort of clear where our heads are with this, is that we do want to establish 3 independent, separate groups, one for the Mangakahia, the Wairua, and of course the Hōteo river system, catchment system. Bring in a member from those 3 groups together with a possible, well, not so much a possible, we'd like to see a member from the Joint Committee chair this, is to form those terms of reference. So we have, and the catchment reference groups have a clear idea of the purpose and what needs, how they'd like to engage, I suppose, with the Kaipara Māori Kuta and the like. But I also hear Tami's sort of comments about the future of the Kaipara or the co-governance, and I think this is a consideration building and leading up to those to that time. So I fully support this to bring those catchment groups outside the Kaipara Uri entities into the framework of KMR. Is that sort of clear enough, Virginia?
Kia ora, Willie, could you just explain the membership of the independent reference groups?
We don't so much have that at the moment, Cherie. We sort of have identified sort of a certain a representative, but it's only indicative at this stage for the Mangakahia. I mean, personally, I'd like to have a chat to a guy called Stu, what's his name, Tommy? Riddell?
Stuart Ruddle.
Ruddle. And perhaps in for the Wairua, Delarraine Armstrong. And of course, I'd like to, and I'd actually had conversations to be able to, with the Hōteo catchment, Mux Hoinik.
Can I add a couple of points around that? The significance of the catchment reference group was to target landowners that sit outside of Kaipara Uri. Now, I'm not sure whether everyone is aware of this, but those that were at the February 2021 meeting inside the Northern Regional Council will reflect the length we went to try and explain to, I think they're related to the people of Puatahi, the Te Orewai contingents who were there. They view this whole Kaipara Moana remediation as an intrusion, as a land grab of their rights and interests. Now that was following the meeting and the showdown we had at Arapawa Marae on the 9th of October 2020. But, you know, it is what it is. We've managed to sort of have discussions, dialogue with the people on the eastern arm of that Wairua River catchment at Whakapara Marae, at Akerama, and of course Maruata and the Ngāti Hau Trust Board. And the indications from that group is that, you know, they're progressing along to get an engagement with the landowners. The opportunity to try and connect representatives who are connected and engaged with landowners across the board, and that in the context of Mangakahia, we are aware that there are marae interests, there are hapu interests, there are private landowner interests, and we've been tossing the idea around, socializing the thinking that has gone on behind the formation of these reference groups. So if we swing to the Hōteo, you'll notice one of the big projects that came out of the Hōteo was the Forest Bridge Trust. And they are a group of connected landowners who have been involved in land care-based projects. And I understand there is a relationship of a sort with Puatahi. I'm not sure whether it's with Ngā Maunga Whakahi. Ngāti Manuhiri, on the other hand, have a section and a portion inside their deed of settlement that connects them to the headwaters of the Hōteo River. And in that, the opportunity to try and make the connection with Ngāti Manuhiri for the purposes of driving, if you like, the Haukainga link with the landowners. I know from Tāmaki experiences or experiences in Tāmaki that there are a few Hauraki-based entities that would dearly love to get in there in that Hōteo Mahurangi area. You would recall, Cherie, the term that's being used by matakana ki matakana.
Sure.
They're taking that literally. I understood matakana to the south was located in the Tauranga Harbour, but you know that's what it is. And of course, matakana in the north is located in the Mahurangi district. So there's that kind of tension. These Kawerau Maki are also claiming the ancestral links there. And then on top of that, there are 44 applications for the marine and coastal areas. And some of those have come from the sublime and the ridiculous, like claiming rights and interests on the North Cape all the way to the East Cape, down to those that hold genuine links and connections. So Manuhiri, in that instance, are quite open to this idea of a reference group for the headwaters. And I think it is probably the point at which the Kaipara Moana remediation also reached in the engagement with the Whangarei District Council. Because technically, they sit outside of the tidal zone that was drawn on our maps in our early deliberations, Willie, Virginia, with the Crown.
Yeah, that's right.
I think if they had it in those early days, we would have been talking about the bridge in Dargaville. But we pushed the point that sediment doesn't come from the centre of the harbour, nor does it fall off the bridge in Dargaville. It comes from upstream, the headwaters, and so in the Hōteo. And then coming back to the Hōteo, just to make one final point, we are all aware of a current environmental court matter concerning a landfill. And with that comes the kind of deliberations we want to ensure are aligned to this remediation program. I've read the reports from Waste Management that talk about the very, very low likelihood of any leachate passing through 2 mountain ranges to get to the Hōteo River. But we all know that leachate doesn't travel on top of the ground. Anyway, I'll leave that debate there, but that's essentially where it's going. The thinking around the Joint Committee was to give it some traction, to give it some kind of link and connection to the emerging manner, or the manner in which our programs are emerging, and of course to support Kaipara Māori kura. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tommy. Thanks, Lisette.
I'm happy to move these, Tammy,
Kia ora.
these recommendations.
There's no further discussion. Do we have a seconder?
Sorry, Tammy, can I just ask, do we need to clarify who would be the joint committee member?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. Sorry, Virginia, we've got to
That's
move
all right,
on.
that's right. I was
Just
yeah.
before we call for a seconder, can we?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. I would also like to see what the terms of reference looks like.
Well, the idea was to put together the group with the joint committee member to form those terms of reference.
Yeah, after listening to your kōrero, I think that we need to actually have a look at this a little bit more further. And that's because of the wide, I'd say, as we're looking also into the negotiations of the Kaipara Moana, I can understand the headwaters, but I also very much understand the waters that are right in the Moana.
Yep.
And run straight past our marae. And yet we might not have a voice in that kōrero. And this is speaking from Kaipara Uri. That is hence why I'm talking about the terms of reference.
Yeah, I guess the point about the Kaipara Uri rights and interests go as far as the line drawn on the Hōteo River. So if you take the view and follow that Kaipara Uri rights and interests, it goes across the Hōteo and swings probably Patitiri and does an arc back to Tutumoe. So what we're talking about are the areas that lie beyond the Kaipara Uri line. And in the case of Ngāti Manuhiri, they have a stipulation in their deed of settlement that specifies their rights and interests on the Hōteo River. Yep. And they're willing to sort of come to the party there. The other two rivers, Mangakahia and Wairua, there's a massive complication in the Wairua. And that Te Orewai is on one arm of the Wairua, that's the Hikurangi River, and Ngāti Hau are on the eastern arm of that, that's the Whakapara arm. And between the Hikurangi and the Whakapara rivers lies the Hikurangi swamp. And if there's ever a contentious piece of wetland north of the Brenduans, that's it. And I guess the added complication with the Wairua, some consideration ought to be given to how that could work in the catchment reference setting. But again, the idea was to try and facilitate that with the help of the Joint Committee and the representatives from those two, from the catchment river systems. So in the case of the Wairua, there's probably a case there for, representation from Hikurangi, and that will include Ngāti Hine, Te Orewai Tauhena Re Marae, and then another representation from the Ngāti Hau Whakapara hen of Whakapara Maruata Akirama Ngāti Hau. And they're quite active. They've been, if you've travelled north in the last 3 or 4 years, you'd notice the upgrade of State Highway 1 north of Hukaranui up to Towai, with the realignment of the highway and so on, and all of that remediation and work that's gone on there has been a result of the relationship between Wakakotahi and Ngāti Hau and those marae in particular. So that's the level of engagement and thinking that's gone on to try and work this reference group idea to the front, to the top. I think the perception is that Kaipara Uri, as I said before, are intruding into these areas. We've always been clear that this is about engaging with landowners, and we're trying to keep that engagement at a local level. So those entities that are located in those catchment areas surely have a clear link between the landowner group, the marae entities or the marae groups, and then the hapu entities. Well, I can tell you now, there's a lot of hapu in Mangaka here. There is not one entity that could stand up and say they are incorporated, mandated to represent their people. Instead we have 5 marae. And we all know that the marae reservation legislation doesn't sort of go beyond the strainer posts at the marae boundary. But the expectation of the people is that that entity can take on roles and functions like this. And I guess that's another level of complication. So the attempt here was to try and connect those that have influence and decision-making capacity as landowners to engage on deciding what would work for their locality.
Okay, kia ora for that. Working with the Hōteo settlement remediation group has been really come together, and I take my hat off to the rōpū of Sarah Nolan and them, but we've all come together to work together as Tūrio Hau, Ngā Maunga Whakahi e Ngāti Manuhiri. And we've had those relationships right there on the Hōteo. So I just see another level coming, or another layer coming, and just being clear about it, about those relationships being maintained.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Sheree.
Yep, there's definitely that consideration. What we're trying to drive here is you and I both know, or well, we all should be aware that the Forest Bridge Trust,
yes,
we're a little bit remiss in making the connection with landowners around them. Sure, there were landowners that got together, but it didn't connect with the places that we're trying to target here, and it's not necessarily that kind of cohesion. I think groups like that you've just described there are critical to how this is all designed to encourage the continuity and the longevity of programs like that. Programs that work, programs that have generated the results for sediment reduction, and of course this latest phase of surge planting. But no, that's definitely not about trying to trump any of that work. It's trying to encourage the cohesion that should exist. I mean, it would be ideal if the person chosen for that catchment reference group of the Hōteo would come out of a group like that and be supported by a group like that, as well as the Forest Bridge Trust and the Ngāti Manuhiri Settlement Trust.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Any further discussions? Okay. Are we in the position to ask for
Nominate
to-
someone?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to nominate you, Tommy.
Well,
I agree.
I was going to say, I don't mind straddling the Wairua and the Hōteo, but I just don't want to end up on the front page of Women's Weekly or something for promoting, you know, our property at on the banks of the Mangakahi River. But I think there's, if I can, no, I didn't have it. What had it? I know I've been tossing this around for quite some time, and like we're about to set up a family trust that we've been tossing ideas around for a number of years now, and we're about to launch into that. And I could just imagine the headlines: Chairman of KMR creates a trust to do this and to do that. But I raised that with all sincerity. Kia ora penny.
I hear what you're saying, Tame. I think it's like it's only for a specific role, which is the terms of reference. It's not like you be there all the time. I think Amy and I have had a little bit of a chat, and we certainly are agree that it needs to be an Uri member, and we both thought it would be best for you to be in that role. So we'd be supportive of Virginia's suggestion that you take it on. I think if you've got a conflict of interest, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do something. You just need to declare it and be transparent. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, I have listed those properties on that conflict of interest, and I'm looking forward to the day to write on there and no longer in my name. But however,
not going to happen.
Okay. Well,
yes, I'd like to nominate you, Tommy.
Okay, thank you, Virginia.
Right.
Tommy, I think you should also take some confidence in the fact that this is a recorded session too, and you've actually been very declarative. You've declared your interest quite openly. So that's also on the record, and you should take some comfort from that, and that you've got support from your colleagues, including myself.
Kia ora. Thank you, Greg. Okay, now that we've had that nomination, are there any further nominations or discussions? And before we seek a seconder for Virginia's resolution, moved for the resolution moved by Virginia.
Kia ora through the chair. Just a clarity. Sorry, Tommy. So Virginia's resolution was to put you forward for 2 catchments or all 3 catchments?
All 3 catchments in the design of the terms of reference.
Yeah.
That's the duration of that role. Just till we get work some terms of reference up in association with Lizette and William. I got that right, Lizette? Okay.
I'm suggesting number 5 on the report there, paper there, Jane. Agree that that one. All right. Nominating a representative from the Joint Committee.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Okay. Sorry, Virginia. Are we taking numbers 1 through to 8?
Aye.
Okay. So moved by Virginia Warren, seconded by Penny Smart.
Yeah, well done, Penny.
All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Aye. Kia ora.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, Lizette and William. I was just going to add William and Lizette we had talked about approaching Brandon Edwards to consider that eastern arm of the Wairua catchment.
Yeah.
He's at the very, headwaters end of it. He's a landowner, he's Ngāti Hau, and he listens. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it that way, but I think he would be a sort of quite an enthusiastic person to get alongside.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Thank you
Kia
all.
ora. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Duncan. Good to see you. We have we are 2 minutes ahead of schedule, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't think Duncan's kōrero is gonna take a little bit more than 2 minutes. Can we suggest taking some? Is it a half an hour that's on there?
Yes, kia ora. It's Tame, it's half an hour for a quick break. Just recognising we're online and stretching our legs and getting a cuppa is important. Thank you.
All right. So we'll reconvene at 11:15, if that's okay with everybody. And take your time, relax, and we'll see you all then. Kia ora.
Kia ora.